Hey, Vlad here, devinside.com. Welcome to another video. 2 videos ago, we learned pretty much everything there was to know about Graal, and in the previous video, we even saw how easy it is to install Graal VM and also how easy it is to switch back and forth between the regular VM and the Graal VM. Today we're going to play around with the native image utility, also known as the SubstrateVM. We're going to create native images for both Java and Scala Hello World applications completely manually from the terminal, and also later in the video see how we can use the SBT Native Packager with and without Docker to build native images from SBT. I'm recording this video at the end of 2019, and native image is still a pretty early adopter technology. It's a bit shaky on Windows, but works alright on Linux, so we're going to stick to Linux in this video. Let me mention right away that this is just a getting started video, so we're not going to talk about how to work around reflection or in fact any other ahead of time compilation related issues. There are workarounds for some of these issues, especially for reflection. Essentially all of it boils down to listing the things that you want to dynamically load, and then native image will statically link them for you. Alright, let's not waste any more time and get right to it. As in most of my videos, I'm using Windows 10 with an Ubuntu 18.04 virtual machine, and I'm using the virtual desktop feature from Windows, and I have shortcuts which allow me to jump back and forth between them like so. Windows, Ubuntu. Now, in the previous video, we have installed the Graal VM, and the first thing that I'm going to do today is I'm going to disable it just to avoid confusion. So if I do java-version, I'm going to see that I'm using the Graal VM, and if I do sudo update alternatives --config Java like this, my password, and I'm going to select 2, which is just the regular VM, and I'm going to do java-version, and I'm back to the regular Java virtual machine. I'm doing this just to avoid confusion. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the Graal VM variable to my .profile file, as you have seen in the previous videos. So we're going to open the .profile file like this. I'm going to open it with Sublime Text. I'm just going to go down and I'm going to say export. I'm going to call this variable Graal VM _home. You can call it however you like, but I'm going to call it like this. It's sort of like a convention, userlib jvm Graal VM bin, like this. Okay, so now I'm going to close Sublime Text, and I'm going to source profile. But in fact, I haven't showed it to you in the previous video. So what I'm also going to do, let me first see it like this. Okay, so I can see it. Okay, but now if I close that and I go back into my terminal, I should see it still. Whoops, Graal VM. No, I don't see it. Exactly. And this is why we're going to go and log out. I haven't showed this to you in the previous video because I wanted to save some time, but today we're actually going to do it. And if it takes too long, I'm going to cut it out from the video. Okay, so I'm going to click here, enter my password, and it should be fine in just a couple of seconds. All right, so let me open the terminal, and now I can do like this, Graal VM, like that. Cool. So now I can do java-version. And now I can also do Graal VM Java-version. Okay, so this one is the regular one and this one is the Graal VM. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to downgrade my local Scala installation. So if I go to Scala right now, we're going to see that this is the version 2.13.0. The latest one right now is 2.13.1. However, there's a tiny regression in there which is related to native image. So for now, we need to downgrade this to 12. Okay, so I'm going to go to Windows. And if you have been following my videos, you know that I have a page called install.devinside.com, which basically redirects to my GitHub and searches for install-repositories. Okay, so there is one called Scala, which is this one, and I'm gonna copy that. But if you look at the bottom over here, I can actually specify the version. Okay, so we're gonna go over here, and I'm going to specify 2.12.10, which is the latest one. Okay, so I'm going to press enter. I'm going to type in my password, right? So these 2 lines, all they did was they downloaded this file, make it executable, and then ran it. So the first thing that is happening is the download of this of the Scala binary, which unfortunately is kind of large. Yeah, I'm going to cut it out of the video. Yep, downgrading. There we go. So now if I do Scala, we're going to see that it's going to be 2.12.10. Great. Let me close that and let me press Ctrl L. Alright, so now we can go ahead and create the Hello World application. So I'm going to go into my dev folder, which is currently empty. I'm going to create a directory called native image playground like this, and I'm going to go in there, okay, which is empty. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to say touch java main.java, which basically just creates a file over here. I'm going to open this with Sublime like that. Okay, and I'm just going to create a hello world application, right? So I'm going to say public class Java main. Okay, the typical public, maybe I can do, yeah, public static void main. Okay, so we're going to have an array of strings, okay, like this, and we're going to do system.out.println. I'm going to say hello world from Java like this, and let's not forget a semicolon. Okay, so for now I'm going to close the Sublime instance. Okay, so we have it over here. I'm going to cat into it just in case. Okay, so it looks fine. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to just compile it with Java C, right? So again, remember Java hyphen version. This is the regular Java. This has nothing to do with Graal VM so far. So we're just going to do Java C, Java main. Okay, so okay, typos, Sublime, Java main. Okay, syntax highlighting even told me that. Okay, there we go. All right, let's do this again. Compile. There we go. All right, so we have the class over there. So now we can just ask the Java virtual machine, which again is just the regular Java virtual machine, to run Java main. Okay, we don't need to say .class. We can just do Java main. Okay, like this, and we see hello world from Java. Okay, so now let's do the same thing with Scala. You know, nothing major. We're just going to do attach Scala main dot Scala. Okay, open this with Sublime Text. All right, and we're gonna go and we're gonna type in there, whoops, could not start metals. Okay, that's interesting. All right, so we're gonna do object Scala main extends app like this, and we're just gonna say println hello world from Scala like this. Okay, no typos. I think it's fine. Let me close that. Okay, so now we're gonna use Scala C instead of Java. Okay, Scala C again. This is the Scala version 2.12. Okay, I'm gonna give it the Scala main. That Scala like this, and it takes a bit longer. Okay, so as we already know, that Scala generates a bit more things. So we have class here, class here, class here, but this doesn't really matter. Okay, so we can't just go to Java and ask to run it. We need to use the Scala utility, right? This is the Scala REPL that I basically just installed, but it's essentially the same. Okay, Scala main like this, hello world from Scala. No big deal so far. Now, if we try to run the Scala application just from Java like this, then we're going to see that it's going to say no class step found error, right? So basically, it can't find predev, it can't find Scala function 0. It's basically just because the Scala standard library is not on the path. So let's put it on the path. So the thing is to know is that every time you do Java main like this, what is happening behind the scenes is that the class path parameter is also set, and the class path is set to dot, right? So the current folder is on the class path, right? So this is basically exactly the same thing as without specifying this at all. So basically, when we want to add the standard library to Java, we need to not forget to also include the current folder. Okay, so instead of just saying Scala main over here and just specifying the standard library over here, right, wherever it is, we need to not forget to specify the dot as well. So we have dot and then colon, and then wherever the standard library is. And in my case, it's in user share Scala lib Scala hyphen library dot jar. Let's see if I made any typos, and it looks like I didn't. So we're running Java, we're running a Scala application basically without the Scala launcher. All right, so now let's talk about the native image utility. It used to come bundled with Graal VM, but they removed it because I guess most people use Graal as the tier 4 compiler, and they're not really interested in native image. So let's go and install it, and I already have Graal installed, as you have seen. So we have the Graal VM, the home variable, and inside of it there's a utility called GU, which probably stands for Graal Updater or something like that. So if I go to my variable Graal VM, okay, like this, inside of it, if I press G and I press tab, it will auto-complete it to GU, and then I can just say install native hyphen image like this, and insufficient privileges, I probably need to do this with sudo like that. Okay, so now it's downloading that component catalog, blah blah blah. Okay, there we go, it's now installed. So if I do that, so if I go to LL to list everything that is inside of there, and I'm going to grab for something like native, I'm going to see that there's also native image. Okay, which means that we can go to my variable like this, Graal VM home, and I can do native image, native hyphen image. There will be auto completion. I can do hyphen help, and we're going to see that something is happening. Okay, this is a lot of parameters that you can pass. Graal VM native image building tool. This tool can be used to generate an image that contains ahead of time compiled Java code or Scala code, right? So it basically takes bytecode and produces a teeny tiny binary. Okay, and this is exactly what we're going to do next. Okay, so let me press Control L, and let me also press LL. So we're going to go to $Graal VM home. We're going to use the I wanted the slash. We're going to use the native image utility, and we're just going to give it Java main. And if everything is set up correctly, it actually should fail. Yes. So it basically fails, and it says that basic header files are missing, right? So we're compiling a binary for the target platform of Linux in this case, and for this we need the the C libraries and C binaries. Okay. After googling around for like a few minutes, I found this. So all we need to do is we need to install the zlib1g-dev like this, and the -y basically says, install everything. So say yes to the whole installation process. Okay, so if we go up like this, it just starts creating this native image, and if I'm correct, it should take around 15 seconds. So you see every step over here, and it takes just a couple of seconds, and it should be done in just about now. And the last line is going to say what the total is. And there we go, the total is like around 15 seconds. Okay, so if I do LL, we're going to see this teeny tiny binary over here, Java main, is 2.3 megs. So if we run Java main, you see that the print line, it takes a bit of time, right? So you kind of see like almost like the screen moving twice, like this, did it. But if we run the binary like this, it's just going to be there, bam, bam, bam. Okay, so we can actually also use the time utility, right? Java time like this, and also time Java main like this. Okay, as you can see, less CPU, less less time. It's not even in seconds. Like it's not even, yeah. It's just very nice. Let's just go and do the same thing with Scala, and the same as we did was the previous trick. We'll actually need to put it put a standard library on the class path. Okay, so I'm gonna do same thing. In fact, maybe I can just go up like this a few times. Where is it? Okay, it's over here. So I'm going to do Scala main. Okay, and we need to also put the stuff on the class path. So we need the dot, which is the current folder, and then we need the colon, and then we need the user share Scala lib Scala -library dot jar like this, and I'm gonna let it run for a bit, and I'm probably gonna cut it out of the video, or I'm gonna spit it up, because this one is actually gonna take around 30 seconds, and you're gonna see it in a last line. All right, as I predicted, it took 30 seconds, and it's over there, and it's also twice as large. I'm not sure why, but it also launches like a rocket like this. Okay, so it's really fast, really fast. Remember that the whole purpose of this ahead of time compilation is to have your images smaller, to have them start up faster, for them to use less memory, less CPU, which is also why companies like Twitter, they're using native image technology basically to use smaller containers, basically to save money. Okay, so you can do the same thing with jars. There are a bunch of flags in this native image utility. You can play around with it yourself. But if you're already using jars, then you probably have a project. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up an SBT project. So I'm going to create a folder called hello-world, and I'm going to open it with Visual Studio Code, and I'm also going to close the terminal because I don't really need it. So there we go. This is Visual Studio Code. So we're going to create a Hello World project, and we're going to use the SBT Native Packager plugin to build the native images straight from SBT. Okay, so we're going to start as usual by creating a project build.properties file. I'm going to set the version to the latest one, which is .1.3.2, and we're also going to go and create the build file, build.sbt. We're not going to change the build too much. We're just going to set a few cool settings. So this is a Graal. This is a very cool setting which came with SBT 1.3. So 1.3 warns you if there are changes in your, for example, if you're trying to compile and there are changes in your source files, it will warn you that, not the source file, in your build files, then it will warn you that the build files have changed. But if you have the settings, it will actually also take action, and it will reload the whole thing for you. I'm actually planning a video about this. The other thing that we're going to do is I'm never using this server that comes from SBT. I'm really happy with metals, and in fact, for this particular video, I disabled metals because we are not going to write much code. So we're going to disable the supershell, which is also a feature that came with SBT 1.3, but it's just flickering if you have like a really small project, so it's really not that great. So I usually turn it off, and we're going to make sure that we're setting the version to Scala 2.12.10. As already mentioned in the beginning of the video, 2.13 doesn't really work for native images right now. I'm actually not really sure what the regression there is. Okay, I believe that this is all that we need. Let's also go and create a hello world source main.scala main.scala like this. Okay, so we're just going to have object main extends app, and all we're going to do is we're going to print out my favorite -u 25550, okay, times 50. Let's do this twice like that, and let's just do a print line hello world, and I'm going to open the console. I'm going to start SBT. In fact, I'm not going to start SBT. I'm just going to ask it to run once. Okay, I'm going to speed this up in the video in post-production. All right, so there we go. We see our hyphens and we see our hello world. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to add the SBT Native Packager plugin to SBT. But I don't want you guys to be confused because it happens to also include the word native in its name. But its purpose is actually not to, to make your image smaller or to remove things that you don't need to throw the JVM out. Its purpose is just to bundle your application for your target operating system, right? So for example, for something like Linux, this would typically be a Debian package, or it could be a Docker container. And lately just received also a feature to also work with Graal. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and over here we're going to go and create the file, which is typically called plugins. It doesn't matter how it's called, it just needs to have the .sbt extension, and we're going to go add the plugin, add SBT plugin like this, com.typesafe, type save SBT. It's kind of cold here, so it's really hard to type. Okay, it's called SBT Native Packager like this. Okay, and the latest version as of right now is 1.4.1. But in fact, what we're installing here is actually a bunch of plugins, right? So we need to tell it, how we want to bundle the application. Do we want a Docker container? Do we want a Debian package? Okay, and in this case we want Graal, so we're going to go into build.sbt, okay, over here, and we need to say that we're going to enable plugins like this, and it's going to call Graal VM native image plugin like this. SBT Native Imager on its own probably deserves its own video. Another thing that we don't really need it in this case, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. So if you have multiple main methods, you better specify the primary one like this. So in my case, it's called main, but if you had packages, then it would be foo.main, the package name. Okay, but as I said, in our case, we don't need it because we have only one, right? Okay, like this. All right, so now we have to make a decision. Do we want to set up the entire tool chain for the native image to work on our local machine? Or do we want to ask the Native Packager plugin to download a Docker image, also of Linux, and to build a native image inside of that Docker container? Okay, so this option, the Docker option is recommended because then you can actually use this utility on the Mac or on Windows, right? So all you need to do is just to have Docker installed, and if you have never played around with Docker, don't worry, you don't even need to run even a single command, right? You basically just need to you just need to install Docker, and you just need to tell the Native Packager plugin that you're going to that you want to use the option with the Docker container. In fact, we're actually going to do both. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to say Graal VM native image Graal version, right? And it's going to be some, and the latest version is 19.2.0.1. Okay, so in fact, if I go over here and I say Graal, okay, what is it? Java version like this, we're going to see this is in 19.2.01. And if I go to my Windows over here, I actually have it open. So this is a hop.docker.com. This is a place where the Docker images live, and you see that the latest one is 19.2.01, right? So the native packager will just go and download this one. Okay, so let's go back over here. So essentially, if it notices that if SBT or if the native packager plugin notices that the setting over here is set to something, then it will know that you want to use Docker. Okay, so if we try to do this now, right? So if I'm gonna go to SBT and we try to ask the native image plugin like this, Graal VM native image package bin, it will probably fail because I don't have Docker installed as of right now, right? So it says sec suppressed. What does it say? Road, blah blah blah, main. Okay, we actually need to go up and we need to say last like this. I thought it would show me the error message. Couldn't, oh yeah, here, there it is. Cannot run program Docker, right? It cannot run it because I just don't have it installed. Okay, so if you're in Linux, you're in luck because, as I already mentioned, I have a bunch of install scripts. So we can just go to over here and search for Docker. Okay, so we go to install Docker, and for Docker you don't even need to specify the version, right? In fact, I believe in the Ubuntu, in the regular repository of Ubuntu, there is a Docker version, but it's advised to add another repository where you have the the more native version. So one of the first thing that my script is actually doing is adding this repository, okay? And then, updating the stuff. And, I'm going to cut this whole thing out of the video, or I'm going to speed this up. All right, so the last thing that it says Docker is now on the path, and it says switching current user to yourself, which is Vlad, to apply the group modification. Current user Vlad was added to the Docker group so that you can run Docker without sudo. If you enter the wrong password, simply run sudo -u Vlad without the single quotes. Okay, so I know my password, which is this. All right, so now I should be able just to say Docker -version or something. Yeah. Okay, maybe there's no version. Maybe there's Docker -b. Yeah, -b. Okay, Docker version 1903.2. Okay, so I can close this now and go and do this thing again. And what it should do, it should start. Whoops, not last. Hold up. I wanted that. Okay, like this. Let's maybe also create a bit more space. Maybe I should also restart SBT. Connect permission denied. Okay, it actually should have worked. Hold on, let me try again. Like this, like that. Let's go and see. No, let's start Visual Studio Code again. Maybe I actually need to log out and log back in. Yeah, I think I need to do that because I added myself to the group. No, but it actually applied it. Hold on. Let me start Visual Studio Code. Maybe just didn't notice that group change, right? Because what's happening with Docker is that you need sudo to run it. But the last part of my script actually added my user to the Docker group. So therefore, I was able to run Docker in the shell, right? So SBT should be able to do that as well. So maybe I just needed to kill the whole process so that it reloads the whole group settings. Let's see. It should actually work. Okay, let me actually log out because maybe that's gonna help. And if it's not gonna help, I'm going to reboot. Okay, log out, log back in, my password. All right, let's start Visual Studio Code. All right, let's go into SBT. And let's do that. And yeah, so now it started something. Okay, I'm gonna create more space over here so that you can see it's doing something. It's downloading something. It says download complete. Actually, this image is kind of large. I'm pretty sure that it couldn't have gone so fast. In any case, I'm just gonna let it run, and then I'm gonna speed it up for you in post-production, and then I'm going to let you know how long it took. But it should take, just for downloading the image, it should take a couple of minutes. In fact, I'm also going to minimize the Visual Studio Code so that you see my CPU, my memory usage, and my network. And as you can see, it still downloads some stuff over here. All right, so it finally finished. As you can see, it took 48 seconds to build the actual image. So if we actually run this again, it will actually notice that we already have an image, right? So as you can see, it says using existing GraalVM native image, right? So it doesn't need to download anything, but it will still take a bit of time to, to build the actual native image. All right, so let's actually create another terminal here, and we're gonna go into target. And there's inside of it is a folder called GraalVM native image, like this. And if we look in there, there's the hello world, right? It's only 5 megs, and we can run it like this. And as we can see, this is the hello world application. Note also that there is a stage folder in there. So if we look in stage, then we're going to see that there's only a folder called lib. And if we look in there, we're going to see that it basically has just our applications as default because we didn't specify the organization, right? So it should have said, com.dev inside.hello world, and then just included the standard library. Okay, that's all that it needed, but it doesn't need it right now. Okay, so if I go like this and like that, okay, so if I remove the stage folder, right, it's still gonna work, right? The hello world. So everything that we need is inside of this binary. All right, now let's do the whole thing without Docker. Maybe you're on Linux and maybe you have everything set up anyway. So first of all, I'm going to close this terminal, okay, and I'm also going to create a bit more space over here. I'm going to go to main. I'm just going to change that so that we know that it actually built a new thing. Hello world from native okay, like this. Okay, so for this we need only 2 things, and the first thing we already did, we installed the headers. The other thing that we need to have is we need to have this native image utility on the path, right? And for that, I highly recommend you guys to append it to the path. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open the terminal. Let's actually open it here. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go to my home folder and I'm going to open it. In this case, it was Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open my .profile file again. So I'm going to go down and I'm basically going to copy one of these. Okay, I'm going to copy one of these and going to put it down like that. Okay, set path so it includes uses Graal VM directory if it exists. Okay, so all we need to do over here, we're basically just going to use this variable, right, like that. And as you can see over here, we're prepending this variable to the path. I highly recommend to do the opposite and to append it. Okay, so we're going to do this, going to cut this out, not like that, like that. Cut this out, also the column, and paste it over here. Okay, so we want to have the path, and then at the end of the path, we want to have the Graal VM home, right? Because we want the native image, but we don't want the actual Graal VM. You know, I want to be able to control the Graal VM from this update alternatives utility. Okay, so we're gonna have that, and I'm just gonna close everything and log out. So over here, log out like that, and log back in like that. All right, so if I open the terminal now, notice that if I say Java version, it's still going to use the regular hotspot VM, okay? But, you know, because everything in Graal is appended to the path, right? So it comes behind this whole Java stuff, and native image is not overloaded anywhere. I can still say native hyphen image like this, okay? So it's still on the path, right? So we have both, you know, the best of the both worlds, okay? So basically, all we need to do now is we need to start Visual Studio Code. And then we can either, you know, we can either set this setting to none over here, you know, this one, or we can just remove this line and just go into SBT and run the same command, and then it will, you know, it will use our local toolchain instead of the Docker container. Okay, so load it. I can just go up like this. As you can see, somewhere maybe it will say that it actually uses, you know, we don't see anything about Docker anywhere. Okay, so let's see, more space. So let's go and see it real quick. Okay, so we're gonna go to target and we're gonna go to Graal. Right, so it was generated just now. Hello world from native. All right, now that's pretty much all I wanted to show you today. Just a couple of notes. As I already mentioned in the beginning, this is just the bare minimum of you know, of what you need to get started. As soon as you try to work with something even remotely more complicated, I can pretty much guarantee you that you're going to run into issues, because a bunch of things in the, you know, Java or Scala world are dynamically loaded, even though you don't use reflection yourself. There's, you know, some library on your class bus that does that, right? So there is, you know, I'm not saying that this is impossible. I'm just saying that, you know, be prepared that you will need to fiddle around a little bit more, especially if you're not on Linux, you know, especially if you're on Windows and so on. Again, having said all that, you know, big companies like Twitter are actually using native image. It's just that, you know, they have a bunch of engineers who take care of all of that stuff. A couple of more things. So about the native image. So if you go to the build, you can actually pass some options directly to the Graal VM. Native image options like this, and you just pass it in a sequence, you know, the same as you would pass in, you know, the Scala C compiler options. Okay, so a few popular ones is this one, -h colon plus, and we're gonna have trace class initialization with a Z, and another one is also -report unsupported elements at runtime, which is not really recommended, but, you know, it's one of the popular ones, right? So these ones are going to be passed directly to the native image utility. And also, if you want to list the things that you want to dynamically load so that native image will include them, you know, aesthetically link them for you, the native packager comes with a destination for that. So if you go into your, so you have your source main Scala, okay? So what you can also have is you can have source, I'm going to create a new file, I'm going to call it Graal. Okay, so you have a folder Graal, and inside of it, you can have your typical native image stuff, right? It's config dot JSON. Okay, so the native packager will look into the Graal folder, and it will include like all of these settings for the native package utility. Essentially, reflect -config.json file is a typical file where you're gonna list like all of the things that you use reflection to, you know, that you use to load with reflection. All right, as I already mentioned several times, you know, this is a pretty early adopted technology. So if you try to, you know, work with a, you know, with a serious production level project with it, that'd be dragons. Okay, but it's definitely doable. There are a lot of you know, things that actually work. There are workarounds for many issues. And I'm gonna stop talking now. And as always, it's been Vlad, devinside.com. Don't forget to like this video if you did, subscribe if you want to improve the developer inside you, and if you learned something today, consider supporting me on Patreon. I hope you enjoyed this whole 3 videos Graal series, and most importantly, take care.